Well, meanwhile, I see MEP Patriciello here with us already. Thank you very much for hosting us today.
Thanks to you.
Today is a day with a big hope for us. We hope that from now on we are going to move the migrant agenda inside the parliament, and we hope you are going to support us and drive us in this way to succeed with our goals.
Yeah, Elena, I already have a question for you. It's very nice to involve the European Parliament, but as you know, what they will say is, that's very nice, but now go to your member states because they're the one who decide anything. What are you going to answer to them?
We'll have an answer, Roland. We'll have an answer. We will have an answer, Roland.
You will have an answer.
Yeah, you can put this question. You are going to have a question and answer time, and you can put all the questions you need or you wish to our partners today.
Okay. Can I write the question or not?
Yes, of course. You must write the question on there is a chat. So let's start. It's already 12:05, 06 already. So I give the floor. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for being here today. Special thanks to our MEPs and, of course, my professors and specialists, Peter Goodsby and Fabio, who very kindly accepted to participate in and give us their time in this important meeting today. I'm going to give the floor to Annette, who is going to coordinate the times and so on during the call, because it's a long one with a lot of speakers, a lot of information, and we need to be tight on time. So, Annette, could you please put us in order to start the day?
Okay. Welcome to you all, and thanks for joining this webinar. As it was said, it is being organized by the European Migraine and Headache Alliance, and it's hosted by Aldo Patriciello, who is a member of the European Parliament. This is organized within the scope of the EU Migraine Action Day, which is usually on the 12th of September. And this is a yearly EMHA event, initiative to raise awareness about migraine in the European Union. This year, Action Day's theme is the missing lesson. And the aim of this topic is to focus on the medical curriculum deficit when it comes to migraine. As a matter of fact, migraine is not prominent in the medical curriculum, and that leads to underdiagnosis and undertreatment of migraine, with of course the consequent burden the disease has on the families, on the people, and on society. So for us, this event is a very special event because it is kicking off the European Migraine and Headache Alliance EU Migraine campaign. So we have great expectations from this webinar. We have some housekeeping rules. This webinar will be an hour and a half long, and we hope to have 10 minutes presentations. The slides are on remote control, so when you want to move to the next slide, you just have to say next or back if you want to move backwards. As mentioned, there is a question and answer session at the end of the webinar, and we have a chat box on the screen where you are all welcome to put your questions. Another thing I would very much like to ask you is to turn off your mic and videos, because that might improve the quality of the webinar. Before we start, I will introduce you the speakers who will be taking part in this webinar. So we have MEP Aldo Patriciello, we have Professor Peter Goodsby, we have Professor Pablo Irimia, Elena Ruiz de la Torre, and Monica Ensini from the Commission. And then we will also have another MEP, Nathalie Collin-Osterville, who will be joining us later on during the webinar. So first of all, let me introduce the first speaker, Mr. Aldo Patriciello. He's an Italian politician who has been a member of the European Parliament since 2006. And over the years, he has been a keen health advocate. He's a member of the Industry and Research Committee in the European Parliament and a substitute in the Environment and Health Committee. Mr. Patriciello, the floor is yours for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Mr. Patriciello will be making his intervention in Italian. I will be translating in English, okay?
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Ringrazio l'EMA per aver inteso organizzare un momento di confronto e di dibattito come quello odierno, attraverso il quale dare meritato risalto ad una problematica neurologica come l'emicrania, di grande serietà e complessità, ma che purtroppo è spesso derubricata a banale mal di testa con conseguenze e scarso interesse da parte delle istituzioni.
I would like to thank EMHA for organizing a moment of debate, such as the one we have today, to raise awareness on a neurological disease such as migraine, which is unfortunately often underestimated and treated as a simple headache with consequent poor interest from the institutions.
L'emicrania è la terza malattia più comune al mondo. Si tratta di una malattia del sistema neurologico, spesso accompagnata da nausea, vomito e ipersensibilità alla luce o ai rumori, che colpisce 136 milioni di cittadini europei e oltre 1 miliardo di persone al mondo. Probabilmente a causa degli ormoni, l'emicrania è 3 volte più frequente nelle donne che soffrono di attacchi ripetuti più lunghi e pesanti rispetto all'uomo.
Migraine is the third most common disease worldwide. It is a disease of neurological system, often accompanied by nausea, vomiting, and hypersensitivity to light or noise that affects 136 million European citizens and over 1 billion people in the world. Probably due to hormones, migraine headaches are 3 times more frequent in women who suffer from repeated attacks, which are longer and heavier than in men.
L'emicrania ha un forte impatto sulla vita delle persone che ne soffrono, con conseguenti ripercussioni sociali in termini di assistenza sanitaria, perdita di produttività, con costi diretti ed indiretti, che secondo alcuni studi si aggira intorno ai 27 miliardi di euro, tra visite, farmaci e giornate di lavoro perse. Sebbene i farmaci possano prevenire le crisi o alleviare i sintomi, secondo gli esperti sono necessarie migliori opzioni di prevenzione e trattamento.
Migraine has a strong impact for both individual and society, with consequent social burden in terms of healthcare and loss of productivity, with direct and indirect costs estimated, according to recent studies, in around 27 billion euro per year between visits, medicines, and lost work days. Although drugs can prevent crisis or alleviate symptoms, experts believe that better prevention and treatment options are needed.
Le norme farmaceutiche dell'Unione Europea garantiscono che tutti i farmaci commercializzati siano di alta qualità e sicuri per i pazienti. Inoltre, per determinati tipi di medicinali, come medicinali per terapie avanzate, esistono norme specifiche. Questi nuovi farmaci biotecnologici, basati su geni o le cellule, offrono nuove opportunità per la cura delle malattie e comprendono potenziali trattamenti per l'emicrania. Attualmente è in fase di sviluppo. Un'altra serie di norme copre le sperimentazioni cliniche, vale a dire quegli studi che puntano a scoprire o a verificare gli effetti di un farmaco sull'uomo prima che ne sia autorizzato l'uso.
EU pharmaceutical standards ensure that all medicines marketed in Europe are of high quality and safe for patients. In addition, specific rules exist for certain types of medicine, such as advanced therapy medicines. These new biotechnological drugs, based on genes and cells, offer new opportunities for treatment of diseases and include potential treatments for migraine currently under development. Another set of standards covers clinical trials For instance, those studies that aim to discover or verify the effects of a drug on humans before it is authorized for use.
Per molti anni l'Unione Europea ha finanziato anche la ricerca sul cervello, tra cui progetti sull'emicrania. Nel quadro di Horizon 2020, che è il suo programma per la ricerca e l'innovazione, l'Unione Europea ha stanziato fino ad oggi 1 miliardo e 100 milioni di euro per comprendere meglio la funzione cerebrale e sviluppare maggiormente la diagnosi e la prevenzione, il trattamento e l'assistenza. Ma per questo problema spesso invalidante è in corso una rivoluzione terapeutica basata sulla prevenzione degli attacchi grazie ad anticorpi monoclonali studiati ad hoc.
For many years, the European Union has also found brain research, including migraine projects. Under Horizon 2020, which is its research and innovation program, the European Union has so far allocated more than €1 billion to better understand brain function and to further develop diagnosis, prevention, treatment, and care. But for this often disabling problem, a therapeutic revolution is underway, based on the prevention of attacks using specially designed monoclonal antibodies.
È per tali ragioni che ho aderito al gruppo informale dei deputati che si occupano di emicrania e ho accolto con piacere l'idea di stimolare il dibattito europeo su questo tema, al fine di incrementare la visibilità di questa patologia nell'agenda di salute pubblica delle istituzioni comunitarie.
It's for these reasons that I joined the informal group of MEPs dealing with migraine, and I was pleased to welcome the idea of stimulating the European debate on this issue in order to increase the visibility of this pathology in the public health agenda of the European Union institutions. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much for this introduction and for this commitment to help us spread the word that we need to act at European level. Thank you very much. We'll be back on that later on during the webinar. Let me now introduce the next speaker. This is Professor Peter Goodsby. He is the Director of the National Institute of Health Research, Clinical Research Facility and Professor of Neurology. And his major research interests are in the basic mechanism of primary headache disorders such as migraine. Professor Goodsby, the floor is yours for 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And let me thank Eleanor and the organisers from the European Migraine and Headache Association for asking me to speak. I was asked to give an introduction, and after Mr. Patriciello's really comprehensive outline of migraine and the challenges and the effects on women and the need for research, I find myself simply agreeing with everything he had to say. It was an excellent introduction. So if I say a few things that you just heard, it's because our MEP chair has done such a splendid job at setting things out. I think I've got a call for the next slide, so I'll call for the next slide and see if that works. So what I started to do is to talk a little bit about what migraine is. The previous speaker did outline that rather well. I've got a slide here which is not in English, just to show you that I'm not familiar, of course, with almost any other language like most English speakers. But migraine is something which affects a broad range of people, and so the definitions have been translated broadly. This is a Norwegian definition of migraine, which suggests that it's attacks that last from 4 to 72 hours, that are one-sided, they pulse or throb, they're usually moderate or severe in intensity, and movement makes them worse. As Mr. Patriciello said, nausea, vomiting are prominent part of the attack, as is sensitivity to light and sound. Next slide. And migraine is, I'll have the next slide. Next slide. Migraine is much more, no, sorry, go back please. Migraine is much more than simply a headache. And I've set out here two perspectives about the word almost. Migraine is used to describe the disorder on the right, and we count the number of days and call it episodic if it's less than 15 and chronic if it's 15 days or more per month. Migraine has a prominent family history. It runs in families, and migraine has the many celebrated ways to be able to turn it on. Changes in sleep patterns, changes in eating, alcohol, weather, hormonal change, again, that Mr. Patriciello drew attention to, makes it a very prominent disorder in women. Now, migraine attacks have a range of manifestations. They start with very often cognitive thinking problems, tiredness, yawning, passing more urine, craving foods, neck discomfort, and then move into those typical symptoms that I just that we just talked about, which are described as the canonical symptoms from the definition, and very often end up in a post-drome afterwards of feeling tired or weary with concentration impairment. So a range of symptomatology that's rich and highly disabling for the sufferer. I'll just have the next slide, which illustrates the broad effect of migraine. I do need the next slide. I'm showing it here as a global problem. You can see this is a heat map. It's work put together by a global burden of disease collaborators published in the Lancet Neurology, and it shows you that there is no continent, well, perhaps Antarctica, but I'm sure there are people who have migraine in Antarctica. They just don't talk about it. You can see that Europe is a hotspot, so to speak, for migraine. Very severely affected by the problem. And partly that, I think, is to do with the excellent work of European clinicians and investigators tying down the frequency of the disorder. So migraine does not respect borders. It doesn't respect languages. It doesn't respect races. It's a very broadly disabling problem. And the next slide. On the next slide, going into that in a little bit more detail, it's 1 year period prevalence data that looks at the effect of migraine across the ages. And you'll see that, in effect, migraine is a disorder of people in their, I want to say from a practical perspective, tax-paying years. It's virtually from when people start work to when they finish work, as you can see. It still affects people in their over 60s and over 70s, but much less than the peak, which is about at the age of 40. And again, as Mr. Patriciello said, it's much more of a problem in females, with about 3 females for every male. It's remarkable to think that 1 in 3 adult women in the European Union have had a migraine attack in any year, and in fact, the lifetime cumulative incidence is close to about 45%, depending on how you count it. Now, men don't get left behind in the sense they have about 10% is their peak prevalence. Next slide. So you can imagine something that's globally a problem that specifically affects females over males and runs at that sort of near 1/3 prevalence at the age of 40, will have quite an influence on primary care. And this is what was called the landmark study. It's a study that looked at patients turning up to general practice primary care and then having a diary to track their headaches. And what it says is you'll see that 3/4 of people who turn up to a GP, and at another 20% for those who maybe missed one of those symptoms. So they had light sensitivity but not sound sensitivity. So more than 9 out of 10 people who turn up to a doctor in the European Union, in North America, anywhere where this has been looked at, 9 out of 10 go to the doctor. If they're going for headache, they go because migraine. It's the overwhelming, burdensome problem that's coming to medical care. And the next slide just puts that again in perspective in terms of the patient effectiveness. These are the league tables of disability. And there, for a migraine person, they're a league table of shame. And you see that in 1990, the second most common cause of disability in the world was migraine. You'll see in 2006 it was migraine, and you'll see in 2016 it was migraine. We hadn't made a dent on it in terms of disability. Migraine is the commonest cause of disability to the under 50s in the world. And as again, Mr. Patriciello said, we count the number of people with migraine in the hundreds of millions. This is an awesomely problematic disorder. And the next slide just gives you some flavour for the kind of understanding that we now have of the disorder. As he said, it's a brain disorder. I'll just have the next slide. It's a brain disorder with a range of manifestations. I'll need the next slide. With a range of manifestations, and be really good to have the next slide. Yeah. With a range of manifestations that you can show by brain imaging. So what we're showing with these little blobs and pictures on the bottom are areas of the brain, specific areas of the brain that are active in the first part of the attack, in this premonitory phase, deep parts of the brain. No, please, I need the slide with the images back.
Vale, coña. What happened?
There we are. Sorry, could you just go back, please? Just let me finish. Thank you. What I'm showing on the left are the images that happen in the very earliest part of the attack, and in the middle there are images that are taken from models of the migraine aura, and on the right are images from pain. If there's one thing we need for a condition that affects hundreds of millions of people with a huge legacy of disability, is research. Understanding this problem has given us new treatments, and understanding it better is going to give us more treatments and better ways to deploy the medicines that we have. If there's any important missing lesson of migraine, it's that we can start now to understand it if we simply invest in it. And the return is enormous because of the cost and the burden on that group of society which are effectively holding us up. Thank you for your attention, and once again, let me thank Mr. Patriciello, who really set the agenda very clearly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goodsby, and thank you very much for your conclusion that the missing lesson, encapsulating everything, saying that we have to start understanding the disease more and investing much more in understanding and addressing this disease. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Professor Pablo Irimia from the Department of Neurology and Neurosurgery in the Universidad de Navarra in Spain, and is also the chair of the Headache Special Panel at the European Academy of Neurology. Professor Irimia, the floor is yours again for 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this meeting. It's a great pleasure to be here. And after the nice introduction from Mr. Patriciello and the presentation from Professor Goodsby, my role here is to talk about the professional experience. So we all agree that migraine is a common medical problem, a disabling medical problem, and we all agree that it's a brain and a neurological disorder. So next slide, please. And also, if you think about the frequency of the migraine, and we think about first about headache. Headache and migraine are frequent reasons for medical consultation. If we checked all the visits related to headache to emergency departments, we can see that between 2–4% of patients suffer from headache. If we check the number of patients attended in general practitioner consultations, we can see that between 1/10 is about headache, 1/3 in neurological departments, and 1 in 5 of all acute admissions in neurological departments are related with headaches. But most of these patients with headache suffer from migraine. As Professor Goodsby showed you before, most patients attended in general practitioner consultation in neurological departments or in the emergency room are coming to our for medical consultations because of migraine. Next slide, please. And one of the problems with migraine is the lack of knowledge among healthcare providers. And the reason for this lack of knowledge is related to the education they are receiving, these healthcare providers. In fact, when we check all the undergraduate medical education that doctors are receiving across Europe, we can see that only 4 hours of medical education is related to headache disorders, and only 10 hours of specialist training is related with headache disorders. So this means that in the medical education, we are not giving the attention necessary for migraine. Also, the headache teaching is not on the curriculum in some of the undergraduate medical schools in Europe. And finally, the training programs for GPs and for neurologists in Europe do not detail the minimum knowledge about headache for the qualification as a specialist. So this means we need a lot of work to do in these areas to increase the number of hours in undergraduate medical education, but also on the training of our specialists. Next slide, please. And the consequences of this lack of knowledge are detailed here. If we check the situation in Spain, for example, the delay for migraine diagnosis is more than 6 years. So if you have migraine, you usually need 6 years to receive the diagnosis, and after several visits to GPs or neurologists. Also, in different surveys in different European countries, patients with migraine who can benefit from professional care, they find difficult to reach their doctors. They find that their doctors are unavailable, the care is fragmentary, and they have difficulty to access. Particularly, these difficulties to access to headache care are in the access to specialized headache units. The number of headache units in most European countries is insufficient to treat most of our patients with migraine. Next slide, please. So here you have some evidence about the consequence of the lack of knowledge. This data come from the studies performed in European countries. Most people with migraine are treating the problem only with painkillers by themselves because they don't have any contact with health professionals. In fact, as you can see here in the slide, in different population-based studies, patients with migraine, less than 20% of those patients visit a GP because of the migraine problem, and they receive a specialist visit in less than 15% of cases. And also, if we check the medication they are receiving, less than 22% of the participants with migraine are using the specific treatment for migraine attacks, the triptans, and less than 13% of those patients who can be treated with preventive medication are actually receiving this medication in Europe. So we have a problem in terms of medical visits. We have a problem in terms of the treatment that the patients need for their migraines. They are not receiving the adequate treatment in most of cases. Next slide, please. So how can we readdress this situation? First, it's important to understand that the implementation of good headache healthcare is cost saving. If we increase the medical resources, we are reducing the indirect cost of migraine, and this is a strategy that is cost saving for every single country. Also, it's important to understand that 4 hours of medical education is not enough to increase the knowledge about migraine in other undergraduate students. Also, we need to increase the knowledge of primary care physicians about headache and particularly about migraine, because only with a small amount of additional training, probably we can reduce this problem regarding the difficulties of patients to access to good medical health care in migraine or in headache. And finally, we need more specialized headache units, because there are some complex patients that need special multidisciplinary teams to treat them, but also because these specialized units are the leaders for clinical research and for postgraduate teaching in primary headache disorders. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. These are the take-home messages that I want to highlight at the end. So it's important to understand that migraine is frequent, is disabling, and most doctors will confront with patients with primary headache disorders. So it's essential to improve the undergraduate training. The second conclusion is that lack of education is one of the problems to have a good management of patients with migraine, and for that reason we need more initiatives to improve headache training and to address the poor knowledge and also the poor awareness amongst all headache professionals related to migraine and headache disorders. In Europe, we need to develop an undergraduate curricula on headache and also a postgraduate training curricula in order to improve the knowledge of our doctors related to migraine and headache disorders. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Erinia, and thanks for all these recommendations. I think I would add one to those you have mentioned, is also to raise awareness among the general public, so that we also make sure that migraine is not just, as you said, just a headache. It's a disorder in its own right, and that needs to be brought to the attention of the general public as well. That was just my small comment on your good, very excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
I completely agree, Annette.
Thank you. The next speaker is Elena Ruiz de la Torre. She's the Executive Director of the European Migraine and Headache Alliance, and she will give you a very vivid patient testimony, I'm sure. Thank you, Elena. The floor is yours, 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Annette. First of all, I would like to thank all my colleagues, all the EMHA members who are the webinar too, and they are part of this. They, as patients, I am going to speak on behalf of my experience, but I am completely sure it's on behalf of all the patients. And I would like to thank especially to the President, Mr. Patrick Little, who is also participating in this conference. And the consequences of what you said, Professor Irimia and Professor Goodsby, is what I'm going to talk about in my piece. So next slide. EMHA just ran. Sorry for this delay. I know that there is a delay while they push the button and it changes, the screen changes. But well, sorry for that. As we hear from Professor Goodsby, the prevalence is very. All those people here suffer from migraine. They look normal people. They go to work. They have their normal life, but they all have migraine. We have asked them questions recently in one survey during 1 week, and questions about how did they see their first visit to the doctor? Next slide, please. How they were attended and so on. And those are some of the results. To the question of how many years did it take to get to a good diagnosis, 37.9 said that more than 5 years. That's a lot. 5 years with this disease going up and down without not getting a right diagnosis, it's a lot. It's time enough to get chronified. How long has it taken you to find an efficient treatment? And 28.7 said that more than 5 years again, and also 54.6 have not found it yet. So it's a lot of people that still need a good diagnosis and a good treatment. How many GPs have you visited? 26%, nearly a third of them, say that between 5 and 10 practitioners. That's also a lot of people going around, circulating around, wandering around, trying to find a solution for their disease, which is a normal disease, and nobody knows about it. That shows how little knowledge there is about this condition. Have you needed to consult more sources of information beyond your doctor or specialist? 75.9% said yes. That could be a huge risk. That could be good, but could be also a huge risk. If they get a good diagnosis and a good information from their practitioners, they won't have to go around looking for more sources of information. So really, we are creating here a big problem with this lack of information. But we also have them tell us about your something that come from themselves. Next. Go.
Ti cambia la vita quando trovi qualcuno che ti capisce, che comprende il problema. I medici di base purtroppo sono sempre stati interessati, sebbene siano sempre stati interessati e sempre al mio fianco, non sono persone preparate riguardo alla migraine. Je me vois obligée pratiquement tous les jours à m'allonger dans une pièce sombre, calme, avec un linge humide et frais sur le front pour justement relaxer ces moments intenses et ces maux de tête.
I was told that it was because of stress, that I should go to bed earlier, watch less TV, and that basically headaches are just something everyone has.
Pasaron 10 años antes de que recibiera la medicación para la migraña y 17 años antes de que me trataran con medicamentos paliativos y recibiera un tratamiento serio.
Die Allgemeinmediziner sehen dies nicht als wichtige Krankheit, weil es für sie etwas ohne Bedeutung ist. Wenn du nicht in ein richtiges Schema passt, dann bist du raus. Keine Nachsorge, keine Behandlung.
Après plusieurs traitements médicaux et plusieurs visites à des kinés, à des guérisseurs, plusieurs massages pour justement relaxer, de l'homéopathie, des thérapies manuelles.
I've been offered blood pressure medication, but I can't take it, and my GP has offered to give me a yearly checkup, but he's never referred me to a neurologist.
Nessuno comprende realmente il problema di fondo. Io sono una paziente atipica, una paziente quasi mistica, di quelle che nessuno vorrebbe nel suo studio.
Me dijeron que era solo un dolor de cabeza. La verdad es que fue un camino muy frustrante hasta que trataron mi enfermedad como se merece.
He told me mine was a severe case, and that I should try to get pregnant to see if my migraine got milder, but how many times would I have to get pregnant to treat my migraine?
Die Ärzte haben im Allgemeinen wenig Wissen über Migräne. Ich als Patientin bin eine Migräne-Expertin im Vergleich zu einem Arzt.
I'm sure all my colleagues or my mates have identified themselves with any of those answers. This is now my personal experience. And very briefly, I'm going to talk to you because I was asked to talk about my personal experience. So this is I'm going to do my best in here. Next. This is how you imagine your life. When I was 12 years old and I had my first attack, and they said to me I had migraine attacks, like my mother had, and so on. Well, I thought I was going to have. In fact, I didn't go to the doctor because my mother was a migraine too, so she just came into my room the first day I was crying in bed and said to me, "Oh no, please no," and she left. I never understood her at that moment. I understand her now. And then you think you are going to get a diagnosis and a treatment. You are going to have a good healthcare, follow-up of your condition, and then a disease control. That's the real life now. Next. That's how my life is. And I think this is the life of everyone. So I started that with 12 years old. Then I started episodic. Suddenly, in a moment, I became a little bit more severe, episodic, but more severe. In moments like around my marriage or the university exams or things like this, I became very, very severe with a lot of attacks and so on. I couldn't understand. I went to the doctor. I got some analgesics at that time. But and you get a little bit better for a while, but then you get worse again, and you go back to the doctor. And then they gave me some triptans. The doctor gave me some triptans to start with. So I started with them. But again, in a moment afterwards, in some years afterwards, I got worse and even worse. Then they sent me to acupuncture. They gave me some OTC analgesics for the moment, for moment, plus the triptans. And I got a lot of medication already. But then I could cope with it. But again, some years after, I got worse again, and I went back to another doctor because I thought, well, the first doctor is not solving the situation, so I chose a second doctor, and I went to it. I was told that it was the best one of the best one that they knew, and I went to him. He was the director of a hospital here in Valencia, but before I move on, he wasn't specialized in migraine. He was a neurologist, not specialized in migraine. So 2 months after he gave me a treatment, I got a Parkinson. And I have a certificate. They gave me a certificate that I had a Parkinson. And then they treat me the Parkinson. They took all my medication away, and they sent me to a third doctor who apparently was specialized in migraine. And then I went into preventive treatment, Botox, many other things, and I got chronified. And I spent 10 years chronified with migraine attacks every single day, crying without not knowing what to do. But then I decided one day, you don't know why, you are so desperate that I went to a new doctor, and I chose a new one, completely different one. But then, and he took me away all the medication, he cleaned me a little bit, he gave me some complementary, I went into diets, I went into a little bit of different type of medication, and she talked to me about the need of having a healthy life, a little bit of exercise, same time, same schedules, sleeping, the hygienic sleepy time, and so all those things that we also need. And then I improved a little bit. I came back to episodic, and I have been coping with it in episodic. Then I went through the menopause. during the menopause, I got much worse. But when it was over, I got better. And then suddenly I started to do the job that I'm doing now, traveling, conferences, organizing this, that, which is very stressful, but I love to do it and I want to do it. And it's my dream, because my dream is to change the world and change the future of the next generations. And then I got worse, even worse. Then I found a very good specialist and I got the new CGRP treatments. But what's the problem now? I don't have access to it. So I am now in a complicated moment. I have no access to the new and innovative treatment, and I know that as I am not, so many other people does not have access to those new treatments. But I am back to episodic. I'm not chronic. I'm back to episodic, and I am doing my best. But this is your life as a migraine. It's a very, very complex one, and your whole life is conditioned to your migraine. Next. In this slide, I just wrote.
You've got 2 minutes, Elena.
Thank you. All the treatments I got all those poisons I got, none of them were effective during my life, and I had all the side effects of all those treatments. Next. And this is especially for the policymakers. And I created this slide because I want them to know that I won't die because of my migraine. And that seems to be very important. It seems that if you die or not because of one disease, it's very important. I won't die because of my migraine. But if my passport says that I am 59 years old, I am 60 now, that was created last year. My migraine started when I was 12 years old. I have had it for, let's say, an average of 2 days per week. 12 months per year, meaning 104 days per year, 4,888 days in 47 years, 30.3 years lost. And although I won't die because of my migraine, I have already lost 13.5 years of my life. I haven't been able to live all this time, which I think it's very important for any one of us. This is my last slide for your relax, Annette. And I know that this is for the policymakers. I know how slow the bureaucracy is. We all know how slow bureaucracy is and how difficult it is to move things forward. But that's why we need you, because 24 hours for bureaucracy is nothing, but for a migraine attack, it's a lot. And 13 years of migraine attacks and living with pain, it's an eternity. It's a huge amount of time. So please help us to move this forward. I think this is the moment.
Thank you, Elena. That was very vivid, as I said. Thank you very much. Before I move on to the next speaker, I would like to welcome Nathalie Colin-Osterley, who is an MEP who has just joined us, as well as Nicoleta Trenca-Farkas, who is the assistant of Joseph Sayer in the European Parliament. Welcome to you both. Now I will give the floor to Monica Ensini from the European Commission, from DG Research. Please, Monica, the floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. You can hear me well, I trust. Is that right?
That's fine, thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, thank you very much for inviting the Commission today to be here to talk about and be part of this incredibly important issue. I guess after the presentations of the people before me, it just became even clearer in my mind how important this is. For the sake of time, I guess, and really because I think we can look forward to probably a little bit of interaction and discussions after everybody has presented. I'll just be very, very concise and I'll go down to business. A lot of my slides are totally, let's say, superfluous now. So let's go for first slide. That is just an overview of what I was going to tell you very quickly, the current activities in brain research on Horizon Europe, and then I'll touch upon Horizon 2020, sorry, and then I'll just talk about a little bit about Horizon Europe, which is the future, and it is what it's really important for us today. So next slide. So it's absolutely clear that the burden of brain resources globally is enormous. It's one of the leading causes of disability, and migraine is certainly scores very, very high, as we've seen in previous presentation in terms of disability and age standardized daily rates. And then I would like to add also that brain disorders and brain conditions after this crisis that the COVID-19 has imposed on us is probably going to become even more prominent. So I would say that conditions regarding brain, mental health are going to be quite central in the next 5 years. Next slide, please. So the Commission certainly hasn't been shy in supporting brain research. I have some numbers here on these slides. I think I'm a little bit more generous than Mr. Patriciello, I think, because our numbers are bigger. In terms of giving you an idea of how much investment has been put into brain research, starting from FP7 that was already up to 3 billion, and in Horizon 2020 that is topping that up. It's going higher than that. Of course, I'm talking about all the spectrum of possible research, from basic clinical preventive healthcare services, etc. And so that is probably why my number is so much bigger in 3 billions. And you have the little distribution there in the sliced cake there. Next slide. Hello? Yes. So just to give you an idea, I just wanted to give you with this little constellation here in this slide of the biggest initiatives that the Commission is funding at the moment. Certainly most relevant for the area of migraine is certainly the co-fund, the ERANET Neuron, and not JPND, which is, of course, it's about neurodegenerative diseases, but Neuron is one of the big activities that is meant to coordinate national research activities, which is absolutely important and fundamental, that is meant to develop strategic research agenda, and it calls and it manages transnational calls, meaning that it's in charge of making sense and strengthening the European research area, making the best use of money, avoiding repetitions and etc. So another big initiative, of course, is the Innovative Medicine Initiative. Neuron is, of course, a public-public undertaking, where the Innovative Medicine Initiative, of course, you're all familiar with it. I'm sure you've heard about it. It's again a huge enterprises of the Commission. This is a joint undertakings with the industry that again has this goal of speeding up the development of innovative medicines, which I understand are certainly very much needed in the field of migraine, and it really strengthens the open collaboration with the public and the private consortia. I would like to then spend a few words about EBRA, the European Brain Research Area, which is a coordination and support action that we are funding now. Next slide, please. And the major players in the brain area are all there. So certainly, you just mentioned European Academy of Neurology, etc. European Brain Council is the coordinator of this European brain research area initiative. The goal of the coordination action is to map the brain research landscape, identifying the priorities, which certainly migraine in this context should come up as a priority. So I suggest that the migraine advocates make sure that the EBRA strategic agenda is well informed that this is a priority. And indeed, because it's supposed to develop a shared European brain research agenda. So again, this is a place where the migraine community should link strongly. This agenda should then feed the development of what we hope will materialize as a European partnership on brain health. This is something that is being talked about as far as Horizon Europe is concerned. It needs a lot of lobbying, a lot of convergence from all the stakeholders. This is previewed in case in 2025. Because it's a member state-led initiative, again, I stress this point of the lobbying and of working on the ground, on one owns country, because this is where possibly things happens. And let's never forget that the funding that the Commission provides via its research and innovation action, it's a small percentage of all the money spent all over Europe for research and innovation. It's probably not more than 10%. So again, it's important to have a big vision that contains all the different activities where it is great to think big, but one has to think big and act locally. Next slide, please. So let's go through Horizon Europe very quickly. Possibly you're familiar with it. You have heard about it. Horizon Europe is going to continue what Horizon 2020 has set up. It maintains the same three pillar structures with the excellent science, very basic research, pillar one, pillar two, with the research that is more collaborative and with enormous interest in impact, and the pillar three, which is now moved towards strong innovation, entering the market, etc., etc. And there is a new player, which is the European Innovation Council, which is a new creation of Horizon Europe that again should really push the passage of research to real life. And again, Horizon Europe will continue to put a lot of effort in widening participation, open collaboration internationally, and strengthening as much as possible the European research area. Next slide, please. I don't remember what I have. Oops. So again, Horizon Europe, the strategic. Yeah, sorry?
2 minutes, Monica.
Yes. So the preparation of the strategic plan for Horizon Europe, it's taking place at the moment, even though things are becoming more concrete. The key strategic orientations are already defined. There's been extensive consultation with the stakeholders, and so there is a document that is available where you can consult. But in next slide, I would like to show you the fact that Horizon Europe will have a very strong health component, which is represented by the health clusters, and the key research and innovation orientations that have been penned down for the new program under the heading Tackling Diseases and Reducing Disease Burden, which it sounds very good for migraine. And the different points, the different priorities perfectly fit the need of the community. It's better understanding of diseases, understanding the drivers and consequences, including pain. So again, there is this specific notion on pain, which is very important, and the causative links between health and determinism and disease. There is this strong emphasis on finding out better methodologies and diagnostic that will speed up a diagnosis and will allow personalized treatment options. Again, a lot of emphasis on innovative health technologies to be tested in the clinical practice, and a lot of emphasis on new and advanced therapies for non-communicable diseases, where indeed migraine belongs. So I would say that the migraine community, research community, has a lot to look forward in Horizon Europe. It has to be very open in the sense that, as you know, there is no naming of specific diseases. The calls are very broad. So the community needs to gear up, needs to start to be very imaginative and get ready to apply it very broadly in very many different places where migraine could fit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. This is very inspiring, and I think that with all the recommendations we've had from the different speakers and the opportunities that you have presented us, I think that now we have a good insight of what can be done. And I leave it now to Elena Ruiz de la Torre to tell us how we can move forward together on all these recommendations and opportunities we have. The floor is yours, Elena.
Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Monica. It was really good to know. We have taken pictures of your proposals, and let me launch today the call to action. As I said, it's time to act at this moment, and we need to make migraine a European health priority. Next. Okay, in order to make migraine a European health priority, this is our call to action to the European Commission. We need to ensure migraine mainstreaming in all policies, health, social affairs, education, and equality. Allocate significant funding for migraine and brain research, medical and social. To ensure the implementation of relevant European legislation covers migraine issues, like Work-Life Balance Directive, European Pillar of Social Rights. To the European Parliament, we would like to raise awareness about migraine and drive the policy agenda. We would like to ensure migraine mainstreaming in all the EP work, disability, gender equality, demographic change, the pharmaceutical strategy, women's health, brain. Set up a European Parliament Migraine Alliance. We are going to launch it today. And to the national governments, we know that health is at national level, it's very strongly act at national level, and we also want or need from them support NGOs in raising awareness about migraine in the local countries to implement policies that will address the burden of migraine, access to early diagnosis, treatment, care services, education, and work, and dedicate significant funding to migraine research at national level too. Next, I'm going to give the floor to MEP Aldo Patriciello, who is going to launch the Migraine Alliance, which is a very, very, very important step forward today. MEP?
Have we lost Mr. Patriciello?
He said in the chat he is not available because he had an overlapping meeting at the moment, so probably he left the meeting a couple of minutes ago.
Why don't we go to it's Madame Colin Horterlet with us? Okay, no?
Yes, no. Hola. Yes, I am here.
Hola.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry, but my assistant is going to translate because my English is not perfect. If you agree.
It is perfect.
So, écoutez, je suis très heureuse d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui. C'est vrai que la migraine est un mal méconnu, pas suffisamment pris au sérieux et pour lequel nous n'avons d'ailleurs pas réellement conscience du nombre de personnes atteintes. Alors, je suis bien placée pour le savoir parce que beaucoup de mes collaborateurs au cours de ma carrière ont souffert de ce mal et j'ai réalisé à quel point cette maladie pouvait représenter un véritable handicap pour les migraineux avec des incidences très fortes sur leur vie professionnelle et sur leur vie familiale. Alors, il est important de bien connaître, de faire connaître et reconnaître cette maladie afin de promouvoir la recherche dans ce domaine, mais aussi d'apporter un réel soutien aux patients. Alors c'est la raison pour laquelle je soutiens pleinement le lancement de l'action contre la migraine. Je remercie mon collègue Aldo Patriciello pour son implication, ainsi que l'Alliance européenne de la migraine et des maux de tête pour leur engagement. Merci beaucoup.
So Mrs. Colin Ostale was explaining that she's really happy to be here today, as migraine, as she understands it, is an overlooked disease that is not taken seriously enough and for which we are not really aware of the number of people affected. During her career, she had many colleagues who have suffered from this evil, and so she is well aware of the consequences and that it's a real handicap for those who are affected. It has strong impact on the private and professional lives of those who are suffering from it. It is important to raise awareness about the disease and recognize it as a health priority in order to prioritize migraine research and support patients, which is a key point. This is why I really support the launch of the action against migraine and to fight for it. And she would really thank Mr. Aldo Patriciello, MEP, for his involvement in it, and the European Migraine and Headache Alliance for their commitment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madame Colin Australie, because it's very important for us that you are here too. And as we heard, you know about migraine because you saw it around you, your colleagues during your life. And I know one of your assistants is a migraine. All my respects to her, because we know how stressful it is to be a migrainer and to follow your agenda at the same time. But and I also know that you have approved and you have accepted to become member of this Migraine Alliance inside the European Parliament. So we really thank you deeply from our heart. Let's go to questions and answers. I don't want to launch the Migraine Alliance because I want that it is launched by MEP Patriciello. But why don't we go to questions and answers in the meanwhile while we wait for him to come back? And if not, you could launch it, Natalie. So let's go to questions and answers in the meanwhile. Annette, do you have you been coordinating with Maria, with our personal assistant Maria?
Yeah, we have had a lot of questions from Roland Pochet, but I understand he has left by now. He was very keen on knowing more about having more examples on EU actions on the brain. But I think it was very specific questions. So maybe we could have a look at other questions. Do you have any other questions from the audience? Is anybody willing to ask a specific question?
Can I ask one to Nathalie Colin, Australie? How do you see the Migraine Alliance moving forward? How do you see that this movement of the migraine MEPs moving forward? Do you know a timeline? Do you have an idea of how could we move forward? How could be our speed? What could we do in when? I think Nathalie is.
Je suis là. Oui, alors pour lancer ce travail, mon assistante va traduire, hein, mais pour lancer ce travail, je pense que on va déjà commencer par poser une question à la Commission sur ce sujet. D'ailleurs, si la Commission est présente là, elle peut peut-être aussi répondre à cette question. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut mettre en œuvre justement pour mieux faire connaître cette maladie et encourager en tout cas les études aussi médicales à se pencher, les médecins à se pencher vraiment sur cette maladie qui est aujourd'hui méconnue.
So what she's explaining that, and as the Commission is present, maybe the Commission can already answer to that, even if in the presentation there was some reflection about it. But how can we at European level really reinforce the knowledge of the doctors and all the professionals of health about this disease and make sure that they receive the proper information and teaching to be able to tackle it.
Okay, thank you. Any other question from the audience?
I think I could add to what Mrs. Colin Osterley has said by asking the EU to support some projects where we could have a better idea of the situation. So maybe go towards the idea of having a migraine monitor in the European Union so that we would know how many headache care units are available, where they are available. Is there any access to medicines, to treatment in all member states? What are the reimbursement situation in the different member states? I think that would be very helpful as well to raise awareness about the challenges at European level. That's just an idea. And also another idea maybe, and that's something that could be asked to the Commission as well, is maybe give some different stakeholders some support so that we could all work together on having consensus on the prevalence rates of migraine, because today we've heard so many different numbers about people, of number of people being affected. So we would need to have that, and maybe work different stakeholders to have some guidelines on diagnosis, treatment, on different treatment like non-pharmacologic treatment. So I mean, it's just some ideas that we could have to have a better idea so that we can influence policy as well based on the robust facts.
Yeah, that you are right. And there is one question that's the Commission to, I think, to Monica.
Can we leave time for Mrs. Osterley's assistant to translate? Are you right?
I translate everything. It was.
C'est bon, vous avez.
Oui.
Merci. Elena?
Oui? Yes? So, yes?
Did you want to say something? Sorry, I interrupted you.
I wanted to say that there is one question for Monica. For Monica, does the Commission has a specific program to support pan-European program to support healthcare professionals' education in migraine?
Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, we here in DGRTD, of course, I am from DGRTD, Research and Innovation, we cover a specific area of collaborative research in health specifically. But as you know, there is going to be also a quite interestingly rich, apparently, health program, which is then in the under the control, I would say, of DG Santé. DG Santé is not here today, but DG Santé has the core policies, especially for everything that is on healthcare systems and healthcare professionals' activities, etc. And the new health program, which is being increased from 450 millions for 7 years to almost 2 billions, possibly will be a place, an area where one has to start working. So it's the health EU for Health program. So I invite you to look into it and to hook to the activity of Santé in this respect. I take the opportunity to say that Annette basically is calling for registries, is calling for migraine registries, isn't it, Annette? Is that what
That's
you're
something
saying?
that could be, that could be interesting.
So again, this is activities that could well fit into the activities of Santé and the future deployment of the EU for Health, which has a much bigger budget. We didn't talk about budget. This is a very dramatic talk we can have, because the Commission at the time asked for 100 billion for Horizon Europe. Some MEPs, visionary MEPs, had called for 120 billion euros. But then the reality struck, and reality struck also in the form of COVID-19. We cannot forget what this has imposing on us. So at the end of the day, possibly Horizon Europe will have 80 billions, which is an increase from Horizon Europe, but certainly not in the scope everybody was hoping. Certainly the Commission was hoping for a very high budget. So the tensions of where the budget goes are enormous, but then one has to deal with reality. And there is a question I saw there in the question box that is comparing with cancer. I would not go that way. I would not go into comparing with other conditions. I would just go for, this is a priority, we need the money, no comparisons, and go for it. So that is why I would. One thing that comes to mind, and then I conclude, is the striking, cunning, incredible similarities a condition like migraine has with rare diseases. I've heard misdiagnosis, 5 years to be diagnosed, going from one doctor to the other, not finding a cure, etc., etc. It sounded like at a certain moment we were talking about a rare disease. Instead, we are talking about a disease that is incredibly common. So I am wondering if the same activities that the rare disease community take and was very successful in obtaining a lot of results. Possibly that is a community that has a lot to teach of how to bring a disease, a condition forward.
I want to add something to you, is that we have been inviting DG Sante, DG Education, and WHO for the last 6 months, every single week, and nobody's here from them.
Yes,
that shows the lack of interest and the lack of how they see it. They don't put any interest.
I think we have to be careful. Yeah,
it's probably it's not, let's say, it's unfair to say lack of interest, in a sense that I am sure that individuals inside the institutions do have interest, I'm sure. Materializing this interest into the right moment, the right place, taking part to things, it's not necessarily easy because every institution is understaffed. I can assure you that we are completely understaffed. So and this is a reality, and apparently we are going to shrink even more. So there is some tension. There is no lack of interest, of course. The awareness of where the priorities are and where the needs are inside the commissions are there. But then the materialization of things is very complex, and there is a lot of forces that go different directions. So one needs to become insist.
Yeah, at the same time, I need to thank you because you really understood our call. When we called you, you immediately said yes, and here you are participating in this. And it's very difficult for us to reach the commissioners, the different commissioners, the different people there. There's a lot of people inside your organization, and it's very difficult to find out who is the one that could be interested in our topic or not.
Indeed, you need to find the big champions. I'm telling you, the rare disease community found big champions, for example, inside the European Parliament. There have been very prominent MPs who have made a huge difference. They have promoted legislations for rare diseases. So again, it's a very specific situation, but having champions that really take at heart the issue makes a huge difference, and it has to be outside the Commission. What I mean is that you need to find your champions.
Yeah,
and the stakeholders needs to become bigger and louder.
Right.
I think we will have the European Parliament Migraine Alliance that will be helping us in this direction. And to answer Eric's question about the Commission's having any specific program on education, maybe that's also something we can do with the Alliance, is ask some specific questions to the Commission, and that could be one of them.
Yes, indeed,
in the future.
Sante will be in the position
Exactly.
to answer you.
So that gives us some food for thought, definitely. And and just to say, the door with WHO is open. So we couldn't have a representative today, but the door is open. So let's be optimistic.
So Annette, let's go. It's only 5 minutes left. So why don't we leave Nathalie Collin-Osterle to launch the Migraine Alliance? Are you happy to do it, Madame Collin-Osterle?
Vous m'entendez? Vous m'entendez?
Oui. Oui.
Bon. Donc, je dois lancer l'alliance, c'est ça?
Oui, voilà.
Bon, voilà, c'est lancé. Et en tout cas, je suis en plein soutien de cette alliance. Je crois que c'est vraiment un problème qui doit être pris en compte davantage. Alors, je sais bien que les priorités aujourd'hui en matière de santé sont nombreuses, hein, avec la crise sanitaire que l'on connaît, avec la nouvelle commission cancer, le plan cancer, etc. Donc, il y a beaucoup de priorités. Moi, je pense d'ailleurs que les moyens ne sont pas suffisants, encore annoncés, ne sont pas suffisants en matière de santé. Donc, mais je crois qu'il faut vraiment faire de cette question une priorité parce que, d'abord, c'est une question, c'est ce que je disais, c'est un problème méconnu et pas suffisamment pris en considération par les autorités. Donc voilà, je lance aujourd'hui cette alliance et je suis très heureuse d'être avec vous et de vous soutenir pleinement.
Merci beaucoup.
Can I say this is a very good omen because for the rare disease community it was a French MEP that took over this. It was Grostet.
Exactly.
And
yes.
I think so. This is a very good omen for the Alliance for Migraine.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yes.
Oui, merci. Donc, cette alliance is going to be a group of MEPs that will be led by MEP Aldo MEP Patriciello and Madame Collin-Osterle, MEP Madame Collin-Osterle, and we'll add more and more MEPs interested in the future. We will be joining them and gathering them into a big group of interest, informal group of interest, and we will be tackling each of the problems that we have and that we want to approach. So little by little, we will present them, like migraine and women, for instance, all the issues that women have while having a migraine in their life, or medical research, or funds, or whatever, and we will work those topics with this MEP Migraine Alliance, and they will raise their questions to the commission. They will move those topics around the European organizations or organisms.
We work together. Okay. Does that bring our webinar to a close? Is it your final conclusion, Elena?
My final conclusion, my final words are thank you very much to all the participants, and a special thanks to all the participants, to the speakers. And this is a moment of a big hope. We count with our MEPs today, and we hope to have a different future, and that this is the day, the starting point day in which we are going to really change the future.
Yeah, maybe we can as well that we will be working with our different partners, like the organizations with whom we are members, like EMHA, EBC, and others. So it's a joint effort. We are not on our own, and we are trying to make sure that we cross-feed all our actions and have a huge impact altogether. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you. Bye.
This webinar will be available on YouTube and our social media, and then we will also send some a short report on this webinar that you can use as well in your future work. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.